David has been deeply involved with the Chinese American community. He was a social worker in Chinatown working with the gangs in the late 1960s. His first participation in the Chinese New Year parade was organized and supplying the Dragon team in 1965. He built his first float in 1969, supplied many of the talents and costumes for the parade from the dance and the martial arts troops he created, became the parade director in 1977, and retired from the parade in 2003, and was given the title Cultural Advisor, which he still retains. He was on the board of the Asian Art Museum for 22 years, as a board vice chair, chair of exhibitions, and chair of the marketing committees. Welcome, David Lay.
Move it over a bit out of the light. Well, the group's changed a lot. All that information, I was dozing off until I heard honorarium. Last time I came, there wasn't one, so I'm glad you folks are progressing where you can provide honorarium. Thank you so much. Yeah, the topic today is Chinese New Year. Lunar New Year is quite confusing in many ways. Let me see if I can forward this. Since this is a genealogy group, I have to tie it in with genealogy. How many of you have traced your ancestry to the time of the Yellow Emperor, Huangdi? Raise your hand. A good many of you. Okay. That is the goal. Anyone traced it before Huangdi? Anyone? Oh, so that's the cutoff, right? And why the Yellow Emperor? This is 4,718 years ago. Why him? Because we consider him the founder of the ethnic Han people. And how did that happen? Well, there's this important battle of Zhu, Battle of Zuo Lu. My wife is back there. She makes me nervous because my Mandarin is no good. My tones are off. So there's this battle 4,700 years ago where the Yellow Emperor, and this was his, actually it was his place. There was a battle before where he fought Yang Di. Then after the battle, they formed this one territory. This is near Beijing. Shanghai is here. Xi'an is about here. So this was China 4,700 years ago. And who did he fight? Ciyo. And he aligned with the male tribes. The males are the Hmongs. And this one battle made us Han dominant. Otherwise, we will be the Hmongs. After this one battle, they were pushed south, ended up with the worst land. They were pushed up to the hills, and some of them eventually ended up in Southeast Asia. So for genealogy, this is the beginning. Now I have to say, Yellow Emperor is probably mythological. So we've traced our ancestry. Those of us who have traced to the Yellow Emperor is really mythological. Sorry to tell you that. Because we know there were Yellow Emperor, he's supposed to be reign 100 years. So that tells you something. If his reign is 100 years and there's another emperor right after him, also reigned for 100 years, then you say, well, how accurate is that? Then male tribe. Okay, so the years are 2679 when the battle happened. Then about in 1911, 1912, we changed that to 2698. And why is that? Because the calendar is really based on the emperor. The Chinese believe the emperor is the son of heaven. So from the Xia dynasty, Yu the Great, one of the founder, because he controlled the flood, he started the new year on the Yin month. And he says the new year will begin between January and February. The Xia, mythological at this point, we can't prove it, to the first proven dynasty, the Shang, they moved it 1 month earlier, so it was December, January. Then the Zhou dynasty came around and says, we're going to do one better, we're going to be earlier. And they changed it to November, December. And then the first emperor came around and said, I'm going to do them even one better. And it's October, November. Let me pull out my notes to see if I have to cover anything else. Beyond this, right after Qin Shi Huang was the Han Dynasty, and Han Wudi, a well-known emperor during the Han, about middle of the Han, he came out with a new calendar. He cleaned things up. He introduced a solar aspect to 24 solar terms, because our calendar is not just lunar, but it's also a combination of solar. So we follow the sun as well. And he introduced that, and he became more specific on the number of days in the solar years and number of days in the solar month. They don't match. For the solar year, he has 365 days plus 385 divided by 1,539. I mean, he was to maybe 10 decimals, very accurate. And for the lunar, he had 29 days plus 43 over 81. That's how you calculate the average number of days in a lunar month. Okay, things change more. The real change came when Sun Yat-sen overthrew the Qing, and in January 1st, 1912, he declared that on this, that on this day, which is January 1st, is really the 12th day of the 11th lunar month, and he says it's the year 4609. He was off by 1 year. And he says this will be the beginning of the Republic of China. Year 1 of Republic China will be the January 1st, 1912. And he'll change China to a Gregorian calendar. So if you're doing genealogy and you have dates, you have to realize this is the day it changed. But the problem was it took about another 30 years for people to get used to it. A lot of people still refer to the old calendar or the new calendar. And the newspapers were all different. Now, the people that did not support Sun Yat-sen, the China Empire Reform Association, they were monarchists. They want to support the emperor, but they wanted a constitutional emperor, so they decided to, instead of using this date, because they were anti-Sun Yat-sen republic, they decided to base the date on Confucius, birth of Confucius, September 28th, 551 BCE. So we have all sorts of dates. So if you were a monarchist, you would use that date. Then to confuse things even more, anyone hear about the Tien Yun dates? Anyone ever hear Tien Yun dates? If you go to Weaverville Temple, the Josh House, there's, keep pushing the wrong button. Okay. There's these two signs right in front, and here would have Tien Yun dates. It'll say Tien Yun. Normally you will have an emperor's date. But these were anti-monarchists. They're revolutionaries. You would call them terrorists if Sun Yat-sen did not win. They did a lot of assassinations. but they won. So now they're the revolutionaries. So, but in America, about 50% of the people in America joined the Qigong Tong, which is a secret society to overthrow the emperor of China, the Qing dynasty. And they decided, we're not going to respect the emperor, we're going to use Tien Yun Date. So this is 11th year, supposedly, of the emperor, but they says 11th year of the Tien Yun. So this is very treasonous. If you did this in China, you'd be beheaded. But they were so open about this. So maybe half the people in the US, when they recorded the diary dates as anti-monarchists, they would have used this date. Let me see. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the Qigong Tong. This is remember Raymond Shrimp Boy Chow that brought down Li Lin Yi? He took over the Qigong Tong in 2006. It's a secret society because if you're going to overthrow a government, you better be secret because you have families in China. If the emperor knows about it, they'll be beheaded. So it was a secret society, but they didn't do any of the mafia thing. Gambling, prostitution, drugs, they weren't involved with that. Their main goal was to overthrow the monarchy and make China a democratic republic, which they succeeded in 1911, October 10th. This is actually done by the 100,000 Chinese that were here. And in Chinese American history, we read about the exclusion law and how the Chinese should not be citizens, be naturalized citizens, because Chinese are loyal to their emperor, like the Catholics are to the Pope. So the Chinese will never be loyal to the president, to this country, but to the emperor, not knowing that the Qigong Tong, with 100,000 Chinese here, made a country, China of 400 million, into the third democratic republic in the world. We have the US #1, France #2, China was #3, and the US was the first country to recognize China in 1911 because it was a democratic republic. So if you look into the history of the Qigong Tong, and there are 373 branches in the Americas, very organized, the concept of a democratic republic came from the Chinese here. Now we're going to get even more confusing, because the Chinese, we have the 5 elements. You've heard about these 5 elements. We also, for our calendar, we have 10 heavenly stems, and this is what they are. And we have 12 earthly branches. These are the names, but since it's harder to remember these names, we give them animals. So you notice they don't actually, the ox will be a mule, but we call it zhou, because these are the earthly branches. So if you combine this with this, the combination, you get 60. So the first one combined with this is your first year. And when you combine them all, you get 60 years, possible combinations. So the Chinese concept of years is really cycles. It's not just 1 year and you're gone. There's 12-year cycles and 1-year cycles. And then these animals are also representing the 24 hours in the day. Each animal is 2 hours, and we start with a rat for the new day, but start at 11 o'clock. So if someone's born on a certain day, it's not 12 midnight. It starts at 11 o'clock at night, and it goes on. So when you go back and check your birth date, birth time, and all that, you might not end up to be what you think you are. Let me see on this cycle. Oh, and then when you have daylight savings time is wrong. Myself, in 1974, I went with my wife back to Taiwan to the hospital where I was born to check on my birth time for doing my fortune telling. So I went in and gave them my birth date. They check and says, sorry, you're not born on that date. Are you sure? I said, I'm sure. So they went back and checked again, and they checked the day before and the day after. And this is, you're born the day after. How come? So I went back home and confronted my parents. Like, how come you said I was born on this date and I'm born on another date? They thought back and said, oh, you were born near midnight, right past midnight, and we had daylight savings time. So we decided to move you back because it was the 15th day of the month and it's easier to remember. So you have all these issues with this whole combination. Now we're going to change it a little more. And I talked about different New Years, and this is one of them. And the Hanwu introduces this system of 24 solar terms, and they follow the movement of the sun. In a circle, there's 360 degrees. So he says whenever the Earth moves 15 degrees is a new solar term. So times 15 degrees times 24 is 360 degrees. So the sun will move totally around. The problem is elliptical. It moves faster certain places and slower other places. So sometimes you have 15 days, sometimes you have 16 days, sometimes you have a little less. Drive mathematician crazy to try to figure this out. One of the things I want to bring out is my first friend in the U.S., Al Chia. He got an email from his wife. Stand up and tell them what she told you to do.
I am Al Chia, and I'm married to a Han Chinese, born and raised in Beijing. So she sent an email to me about a month ago saying, you're a rat person, meaning I was born, you're the rat. So she says, on February 4th, between 1600 and 1800 hours on that day, you're not to do anything. Stay home, sit down, read a book. Don't talk to anybody. And I have no idea why. You know? But this is a woman who believes in feng shui, believes in a whole bunch of hocus pocus. I mean, before we got married, I mean, looking at that chart, the one you showed before,
Yes.
with the 5 elements,
Yes.
we did a chart. We went to a feng shui doctor that did a chart and figured out that she was water and I was wood. We were one or the other, that we were reasonably compatible before she would agree to marry me. Because if I was wood and she was fire, no way. Anyway, so that's the background. So I'll let Dave explain to you what that means.
By the way, his wife is a MD, trained scientist. And but these were the instruction with no explanation. And I think many of us grow up that way. Our parents said, do this. Don't wash your hair before on New Year's Day, this and that. And if you ask why, sometime, but most of the time, just do it. Right? So this is the Chinese concept of these rituals. And they're really not superstition. People say it's superstition, but the Chinese treat it as rituals. Traditions, customs, just do it. But real belief, possibly not, but why take chances? I think that's the concept. But when Al told me this, when we were playing tennis last week, I said, come to this lecture, I need you to say this, because it is, if it's your birth year, animal is dangerous. A lot of people say, wow, next year's going to be my year. They're so happy. Well, for the Chinese, this is dangerous, and you have to take precautions. One of the precautions is to find a compatible animal and wear that as a charm. My wife wears red socks and underwear, and they're readily available. And you can get other charms to protect you. So Al, I'll get you a charm so you can go out and play tennis with me during those hours. But don't tell Jenny, she'll still get upset. But the key part is, for this is Li Chun, when the earth is at the, let's see, spring commences. This is considered a new year, and it's February 4th. I take that back, mainly February 4th, because it's based on the solar position of the earth and the sun at 315 degrees. So this is very observant of the Chinese to come up with this, and they have names for each one of these, and of course Qingming is solar. We always do that on the 5th or the 4th, depending on leap year or not leap year. So let me see if I cover that. Okay, now we have the solar. Yes?
That's where she got February 4th from that?
Yes. That is the real Chinese New Year. And I'll talk about Li Chun later on. But to make the calendar even more complicated, we throw in the movement of the moon. So Lunar New Year is defined as this. It's very easy. You find a winter solstice, which is normally December 20th. Then you look up when the full moon, the new moon is going to be, is the second new moon after the winter solstice. So that's very easy to calculate. Just like Easter is the second full moon after the spring equinox. So for the West, the Easter is this way. For China, solar calendar is really Qingming, and we have Guodong, the winter solstice is very. So the lunar is 29.5 days, so how do you match it into the 365 days and 12 months, solar months? Well, the Chinese figure out, as with the Greek and the Babylonians, it takes 19 years to match the lunar month with the solar to only have an hour or two difference. Because you're going to have 228 solar months in 19 years and 235 lunar months. So there's 7 months difference every 19 years. So if every 19 years you inject 7 lunar months in there, so it's about 1 out of 3 solar years, you inject a lunar month, you have 13 months in the Chinese year, you're going to catch up. And how do you determine which year you add the extra month? You go from the 11th lunar month to the 11th lunar month of the next year and see which years you have the a extra new moon. That's the year. Yes.
David, if you want to be totally accurate,
Yes.
it's 18.6 years.
We have someone in astronomy here. Thank you. Calvin is here. He has extensive genealogy on your grandfather,
My father.
your father, Wan Fong, and we can talk. He would be a good speaker about his incredible father. So most of you will celebrate Lunar New Year on the 25th this year, because everybody is January 25th. It's early this year. I'm going to celebrate it on the 24th because the new moon occurs at the same time everywhere on Earth. Okay? So it's the 25th, Beijing, 5:43 a.m., exactly when the new moon occurs. But here at the Mormon Temple is the 24th, 11:44.
144.
Oh, sorry, 1:44. So, if you're really going to be accurate, if your life is based on the position of the planets and the sun and the stars, this is it. Okay? We can celebrate one day early. Oops. So everybody know about the Gregorian New Year. But the Lunar New Year, I've always seen them where they say year of the rat 2020, but it's really 2018 coming up, okay? They're never accurate. But we don't have to talk about this because you already know about them. But it's the preparation for the Lunar New Year comes starting at the winter solstice, December 20th, normally. And for the Cantonese, we always eat tang yuan. Up north, they eat tang yuan on the Lantern Festival, 15th day of the new month. Cantonese like to eat the salty kind, and Northerners normally the sweet kind. The only place I can find this is Capital Restaurant in Chinatown. It used to be all the restaurant would serve this on the winter solstice, but it was round tuan yuan to have family reunion. You're supposed to stay home on the winter solstice. And then in the north more than the south, on the 8th day of the La month. La month is the last month of the Chinese calendar. And this is more a Buddhist celebration today, is to cook large vats of grains, 8 grains, multiple grains, with dates, and you feed the poor. This is a Chinese concept of boning, nutrition, building up for the cold winter. And then we also eat la rou, Lop Yuk, for the Lop month. A lot of people say is wax meat because it looks like wax, Lop Yuk. It sounds like lop and la. It's the same, but it's really la is the 12th month. It's called la. And you can tell by the word for la has the moon character. And if it were wax for beeswax, it will have an insect radical on this side to define the two. But this is great. Again, nutrition to build up the body. And China has done this. They know about nutrition, but instead of telling people that's uneducated the science behind it, they said just eat it at the festival. People will eat it for the festival, but you tell them it's good for you, they might not. 23rd day of the La month, and in the south mostly the 24th day, there's some differences, is to send off your kitchen god. How many celebrate this? You actually do. You're the first one that I know. Do you actually burn? Do you have the picture? You don't? Okay, but you know about it. I've not known anyone. We talk about this all the time, but I don't know anyone. But in traditional China, the stove is the center of the family. But the celebration is always conducted by male, not the female. You would think otherwise, but it's a male holiday, whereas for the female, they'll take care of it for the Mid-Autumn and for 7/7, the cow herders. Those are considered female holidays. And we call this the Little New Year. On the teaser, I mentioned there's 4 New Years. So we have the Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, the Western New Year, and this is a Little New Year. And it's time to party because your spy, the household spy who will report to the Jade Emperor, he's gone. He doesn't come back until New Year's Day. So you have from the 23rd to the 1st to really party, swear, whatever you want to do. So this is the time. Now we go to Li Cun, is when the Earth is at 315 degrees on the elliptical around the sun. This is the day we change zodiac animal. As a kid, I always thought it was funny. If we're supposed to match people by their animal for weddings, there would be more of one than the other because the years are so different with the Chinese calendar. But it turns out it's always about February 4th. It could be February, it depends on your latitude, your time zone. So it could be a little off, and supposedly on this day, the eggs can stand on ends. That's the story. So everybody plays with that. But you can do this any day. But it's the Li Chun, beginning of spring. And from Han Dynasty, they say the new year is Li Chun. Or Li Chun. Li Chun. Sorry, my wife is back there. It's Li Chun, beginning of spring. And this would be the official New Year's, is when the animal change. Okay, so if you're born near the February 24th, you could be one or the other. You know, I think about 8% of the population have it wrong because of this. Okay, then we have characters that you see for Lunar New Year. There's preparation for the Lunar New Year. You see this all the time. Folk in Chinese, Fu in Mandarin. And it's really comprised of the roof, mouth, and land. So if you have roof over your head, shelter, food to eat, and land, and this side is interpreted two ways. One is clothing, you can see the clothing, and one is progeny, to have a son. And so this is blessing. So blessing normally hung upside down to means come. So you've known that, or that's very popular. Lesser known is placement is very important for the Chinese. And they would say nan zuo nu you. Male left, this is stage left, and female right, spell wrong. My wife is looking at it. So in the parade we have the male, female, and the placement must be this way. When it's coming at you, the male is on the right, the female. But the easy way to remember is the Chinese word for hao. Female on the left, male on the right. So when you place, your placement are correct, you have hao, feng shui. Okay, so this is very important. And I'll get to why later on. So, New Year. We know this is ox, mule, right? You see the horn here, a pair of legs, the body with a long tail. So we know this word is Nian or Ni for year. What's the relationship? You've heard of the Nian beast, the story of a beast that came every year to terrorize a village. Well, it has horn, has 3 pairs of legs, and an extra eye. So what have you seen in the zoo like this? Was a monster. So the concept of the year is something to be feared. We have floods, famines, pestilence. Very hard to survive the whole year. So that's why for New Year's Eve, you gather your whole family, count heads. The next day you visit your friends and relatives, see who survived Nan. Okay, this is given to me by Gordon Liu. And I've been saying this for 50 years. I go to school and talk. But I've known ever since Gordon Liu told me this is not true. As with a lot of our history and story we talk about ourselves, might not be based on truth. This is what the Nen started off from. It means standing grain, to have grain, and the word for 1,000, abundant grain. When you harvest the grain is a year. That's where this really comes from. So don't believe everything I say. Okay, so we decorate our house every year, and then my wife is always a Warrior fan. And we kind of go overboard with it, and then in our living room, we have this pinwheel, and I might give it out later on, is to keep your luck turning, and if you have bad luck, change your luck. And it's always the grandmother would buy it for the grandchildren and yields it. To have sons is also the pomelo, is pronounced that way in Mandarin, or Chunhe, or Quanhe, for completeness. This was a few years ago when walnuts were selling for thousands of dollars. It was really hot about 2008, and I bought in on that. And then I got and then other auspicious things for decoration. And then we have, this one is a rebus, is 事事 平 no 事事平安 because it's 苹果 and 如意 and longevity as well. But this is shaped in the scepter 如意. So putting this together, you're telling people 事事 because these are 柿子. And then this is 苹果 平安 如意. Actually, this is the an, this the stand. And then this is the other tray that you bring out for guests. And I think we have one red envelope. Anyone know the reason for the red envelope? Okay. And you only find this really in house of prostitutions. When you go and the people servicing the house of prostitution give you a taste of sweet, when you first come in, you're supposed to leave a red envelope. And then the girls will always say, everything comes in pairs to push you to leave another envelope. So we decorate the house, and this must be the year of the horse, and we put that up. And then this is forso, to bring in the wealth. And this is fish. These are 年鱼, so 年年大吉, to have big auspiciousness throughout the year. This must have been the year of the dog. They're from the north. And of course, you put up couplets. Now, Reverend T.T. Tam at the Methodist Church in Chinatown told me this tradition of putting up the red paper came from the Jewish belief of the Passover, where they smear blood on the doorway to be passed over so the first son won't be killed. That's what he said. I doubt it. But he says Chinese used to do blood, then they put up the red paper, then they decide to fill it in for these couplets. And I'll go a little into the couplets. Oh, this is a bad shot. But anyways, they're from mainly 5 to 7 characters. Our genealogy generation name comes from these couplets. If you've gone into your jiapu, every generation takes one character. If you're this, your children will take this, your grandchildren will take this character. They work out with meaning going up and down. If you read it this way, has meaning. If you go sideways, they have to have relationship. Like flower, bamboo, to report, to open, which is a verb. Spring, a year, peace, wealth, status, and security. So they have to go that way as well. So it's actually not that easy. And then we have flower fairs in preparation for the New Year to buy other things. This is in China, and it's only in the south. Up north, they're too cold to have any flowers. And this is in San Francisco. I think we have a bigger celebration than in China, and a lot of it is thanks to Gordon up there. He's involved with these fairs and also the parade. But if you look at these oranges, they're very special. You see the bump? Because this is the male sex organ. And the Chinese have this all over the place. Jingdui, those sesame balls, you want one that has a little bump too. And we also, for this time, have qigу, arrowroot. Qigу has to have that little bump. On and on and on. It's very sexual. Our parents don't tell us. But flower fair is one of the things to do. And of course, you already know the do's and don'ts. No knives, no sweeping, no washing your hair. And it's the largest migration in the world, annual migration. This is, I think, Guangzhou train station. This is not in the train station. This is outside the train station trying to get in. Yes, it's mass migration, and this is a time when we have the highest divorce rate because people go back to the village and find out oh, their wife now has a child, and how do we have this child? They work out the month, so it can't be. And or the wife goes to the city and find out, oh, you have another family. So this is a very stressful time. And of course, you go home for the Tuan Nian. This is very important, and there's certain foods you have to eat. Symbolically, you have to have the fish, has to have the head and tail. The chicken has to have the head and tail. Of course, you can't get that at Safeway, so you have to go to Chinatown to buy a whole live chicken and slaughter it. And this goes back in, I think in the 70s when the Vietnamese first came, and the Chinese would take the bus, go to Chinatown, buy a live chicken and take it onto the muni bus. And this is recorded by Herb Cain. And he says, the bus driver says, oh no live animal unless it's a seeing eye dog and you're blind. So the lady says, no problem, twisted the head, not live. So it's very important to Chinese to have the whole fish for wholeness, completeness. Of course, you're not supposed to finish this to leave something for the next year. I'm running out of time, so I have to go fast.
No, take your time.
And then for New Year's, there's a lot of tradition. Ganbei, you do a lot of drinking. I don't know if any of you notice where the position of the cups are. If someone's senior, more senior than you, you have to lower your cup. Otherwise, you're not giving face. Okay, so everyone try to lower. Of course, this guy's the head honcho, so everybody's slightly up, but he's not low enough, in my opinion. And then we have CCTV extravaganza. Now everybody stays, New Year's Eve in China, they all watch this, and they have a lot of games, including, just a lot of games using WeChat. And this is the biggest show China has now. And one of the things that less people know is you're not supposed to fall asleep. Because the tradition is the longer you stay up, the longer your parents will live. Wow. So I think Linda stayed up a lot. My mother-in-law's 96. So whether they believe it or not, I don't really think so. But they like to keep this tradition of loving your parents, this concept of it. So some of our traditions, people say, is superstitious. But we keep it because we want to show our love. And then, of course, the don'ts, already, your parents probably whack you over the head for that. And then 5 o'clock in the morning, you're supposed to light 3 firecrackers in the evening before. And here we say to ward off evil spirits. I don't like that term because the Chinese really didn't. And it was to Mandihong, to make the grounds all red as sacrifice, blood sacrifice. And red is really the happiness color because it refers us back to the color of the Ming Dynasty, the last Han Chinese dynasty. And you kind of put out the red carpet and sacrifice to ancestors and deities to welcome them here. And then it creates the smoke. Have you ever seen any paintings of Chinese heaven? Paradise is always misty. So you create the atmosphere where they feel comfortable, and the sound announced to them, we're having a ceremony, we're having a celebration. Please join us, to the ancestors and the deities. And that's the real reason for these fireworks. And then, of course, the first day you report to your ancestor what you've done all year. And then you also have a tradition of greeting from the oldest down. So is this element of respecting your elder and the new lineup. If someone died, you have a new lineup. Someone moved, you have a new lineup. So everybody know who's in charge. So this is very important to the Chinese, and it's good to be remembered. I think I've talked about this on my talk about death, that everybody will die, but you kind of want to be remembered. And the Chinese, through genealogy, through the Jiapu, have recorded this. You will be remembered if you're in the Jiapu by future generations. So next, of course, first day you go to the temple to return thanks. If you had asked for a favor, it came true, you go back and make a big donation, you bring a roast pig. You will help with the utilities. 点香油, 点香油, the oil was a light. You can buy one of these lanterns that will be lit all year for $98 at the Tien Yun Temple, which I have one for my family. You go fortune telling. That's the main thing. They have fortune tellers on this day tell you what to avoid. Don't do anything between 1800 and 2000. And of course, you have to get ready with your hongbao. Now in China, they use less and less of this because you can do it on WeChat. You can send it to people on WeChat. You can send it to your WeChat group. You can throw in $100 and they get different amounts. It's all random. They do it on TV. They give virtual money and you end up with so much. So we're behind times here. Of course, you go and buy me. This is very important. See your relatives and friends. Of course, you do it by FaceTime now. It's all virtual, and you get the hongbao virtual. And then you celebrate publicly. China, during the Cultural Revolution time, New Year's Eve, you have to come out to do Yangge dancing. It's impromptu dancing to the music. It brings everybody together, but you're kind of forced to celebrate. And in villages in China, they still go Bainian, doing Yangge. They would perform going to the next village to wish them New Year. And here we have it in schools, and we do all that at New Year's time. Of course, we have the pageant. Very American. The first one that I could find was Rosie Liu in 1915. It was a fundraiser. By 1927 was fundraised for the Chinese hospital. And in 1930, they made English proficiency a requirement. So in the old days, you spoke Chinese, but being able to speak English was difficult. But when my wife was involved, she was one of the few that can speak Mandarin. Then, because it's the year of the rat, actually year of the rodent, I have to mention rodent. On the third day of the New Year in the evening is the wedding of the mice or the rats. And you're supposed to go to sleep early, not bother them, so they won't bother you the rest of the year. But the story really is the parents, in those days was arranged marriage, they were reaching too high. Originally they want their daughter to marry the son. So there's a lot of story, and there's another story that they decide to marry their daughter to the cat, and of course everybody in the wedding party got eaten. So it's telling parents that are making matches in those days not to reach too high. And you have to compare families. And then in China, we have 对门当户对. Architecturally, if you're of a certain ministerial level, the emperor will tell you how big these architectural features can be in front of your house. You have a pair, when people walk in, they look at it and they say, oh, this is my superior, this is my underling, by the size of the drums, these circular marble drums. So they said, you must compare that you're marrying someone at about the same level. Seventh day of the first month is Day of Man, is everybody's birthday. It's not on the first, it's on the seventh day. You gain a year, and then you're supposed to get with your friends and your relatives to Lo Sai Gai. This is a Cantonese raw fish dish that you only have it on the seventh day of the first month to celebrate everybody's birthday, but to everybody become prosperous together. Lo Sai Gai. The reason for this is Chinese really don't celebrate their birthday until much later on when they turn 60, 80. Because your birth date, especially your birth time, is more valuable than your social security number and your password. Because people get that, they'll know all about you, because this is what you give the astrologers. You only give that when you're about to get married to see if you're compatible, and I'm sure Al did that with Jenny, to make sure you're compatible. And this gives away everything. Your future, people can read right through you, know everything about you if you gave away your birthday. So why celebrate it? Everybody celebrated at this time. And then on the 15th day of the New Year is the Lantern Festival. This concludes the New Year, and people always have lanterns, and this is our parade. So look at the dragon. This is always the second Saturday after the New Year. So it's about on the 15th day, and oftentimes it does fall on the 15th day of the Lunar New Year. But really our dragon is a big lantern. That's why we have it at night. One of the reasons. It is a lantern festival. It's the real kind of parade we have in China for the New Year, where at night the kids come out with their lanterns and form a procession. So this is a shout out for Marysville Festival, February 22nd to 23rd this year, because the lunar festivities last a month or two after the Lunar New Year. If you belong to a family association, your Tien Yun sometimes is a month or two after the lunar festival. And for Marysville is the near Saturday to the second day of the second month. And we need volunteers this year to be our toy son. God of Wealth, we have costumes to accommodate everybody in this room. And you can go there as one of the oldest surviving, continuous, practicing, active temple. And you can buy this for $25 and they'll light for a whole week. And Annie and Henry were just there and they lit one. And here are other symbols of the New Year. This is during the Cultural Revolution time where they wanted a lot of babies. Mao didn't believe in the one-child policy. He's not the one that put that in. He thought China would be stronger if we had more people. So this was to have a lot of kids with fish for surplus, happy marriage, prosperity, to continue to have sons. And this is sheep. Joy. So you can read a lot into this, and I've already showed this. And then people always take these out, and most homes have these. What are these? Anyone can say? Football cell, right? 福禄寿. And they're always placed this way. Go home and see if they're placed right, because he's a minister. He's always in the middle. So you always put him in the middle. Remember placement? You have to place it correctly. He is Fu. Fu Lu Shou. Fu. And he's the progeny to have a child. And Shou, longevity. But the Chinese know is not good enough to have an old age. Right? To be old and you're infirm, your mind is not working. So to show that, and by the way, this, if you turn 90, the emperor gives you this dragon cane. With this, you can beat anyone, including the emperor. They can't say anything. So go to China and get yourself one. And look at the head. It's very odd, right? And the Japanese ones are even longer. What is it? It's the male sex organ. So it means to be old, it's important to be vigorous, old, to be sexually still vigorous. And what is this? This is peach of longevity, but they don't tell you this is a female sex symbol. Okay, so the Chinese, a lot of it on the folk culture side is very sexual, and they'll tell you different things. I want to talk about rebuses. My daughter made this for me because I was trying to explain to her about rebuses. This images that gives you sound that tells you another message. And almost all Chinese decorative art has hidden meanings. But if you can read the rebuses, you can figure it out. So try to figure this out. These are, of course, B's. But how many do I have?
4B.
No, just here.
Two.
2.
B.
So 2B, and what is this?
Shovel.
What is this?
Shovel.
Shovel? No, my daughter's not a good artist. This is a oar.
Oh.
And what is this? You tie a knot.
Knot.
2B or knot.
2B. 2B.
Very simple.
Knot.
So if you
2B.
spend some time saying, what is the person trying to tell me? What's the message? So here, 大鸡土, Ji is auspicious, and this could be a Ji, sounds like it, is a male child, and surplus. Fish means surplus. So these two basically say the same thing. These are Nian Yu. This kind of catfish is called Nian Yu. But the first word Nian is like a year. So Nian, because there's two. Nian, Da Ji. Because this is an orange, it's also a Ji. So it has to be big. But this one I showed before, Nian, these are the catfish. And they write it out daji, or you can look at this. A big orange is also this. And then this is another one I use. This is Korean. They always say this is a tiger. I say I don't know any tiger with spots. Right? They're leopards. So they borrowed this from the Chinese, but they twist it around. Their tiger with spots actually smoked a pipe, because it means long time ago, when the tiger smoked the pipe. And it's always next to a pine tree, which for the Chinese represent the dragon because of the scales on the pine tree. So you have tiger of the west, dragon of the east. And this goes back to Neolithic time. And this is a xique, heijiao, which is a bird of happiness. So what this is really saying for the Chinese, leopard is a bao, and to announce is bao. So this is bao shi, to announce joy. And if there's two of this kind of bird, is to bao shuang shi, to announce a marriage, double joy. So this is word for joy you see at all weddings in Chinese restaurant. But what is the roots of it? It's really a hand holding a drumstick. This is a drum on the drum stand, and this is a mouth. So if you have drumming and shouting or singing, you have joy. That's what the wedding. So when you go to a wedding, your children, grandchildren have their wedding, make sure there's drumming and singing and shouting. Oops, here we go. This is another auspicious one I like. Is given at weddings and to people of old age. Is old mirror and a pair of shoes, because shoes are always together until they're old. So this is a wish to be 同偕到老, to be together. 同 is browns, 同偕到, and one of these should be turned upside down for the sound 到老, because this is very old. So to be a couple until you're old. This is a very easy one, 平安如意. This is a 平, and this is a an, and this is a 如意, to have as you wish and to have peace. 三阳开泰, which is the new year, wishing everybody a good new beginning. 三阳 could be the goat, or it could be the Tai Chi symbol. Of the 3 line, that's all solid line, male. And then this is Wu Fu, the 5 blessings, the 5 black bats representing the blessing. This is old age, longevity. Why? Because one of the 5 blessing is Fu Lu Shou, you wish them Fu Lu Shou, the 3 blessing, plus love of virtue is a blessing, and a natural death. Because you mentioned death, you want to say you have a well-rounded old age death. So that ensure that it's old age. Okay. 福在眼前. Blessing is in front of your eyes. So this is money, is 钱. And it's a whole vast blessing, and it comes from heaven. It's descending from heaven. 3 manys, to have many sons, old age and a lot of money. 和和二仙. You give this one to newlyweds, wishing them 早生儿子, to have early sons, wish for early sons. So Chinese, we have all this 官上官 to move up in your work. And this is another favorite, 3 Friends of Winter. That could be the logo for this group. You have the 3 plants. You have the pine, bamboo, and plum blossom that survive the winter. So it's friendship in harsh times. So this is very important. I give this to my good friends. And they said, why are you giving me this? My wife talks about this. If you want to know about this, I gave you the link. She has teachers training at the Asian Art Museum. Go to the link. You can upload it. And my wife talks about a lot of this, but she doesn't talk about the negative ones. I like the negative ones. To give to people they don't know, they thank you and say, yeah, I'm thinking about you negatively. So this is 狮子. Oops. Sorry. Oh, wrong side. Sorry. Oh, I'm way behind. Oops. I totally lost it. Sorry. And I'm giving away everything. Here we go. So 狮子 is persimmon. But when you have a lot, it's 多事. So a busybody is someone who's 多事, especially 多事飞. So the bird is flying. 多事飞 in Cantonese, right? So if you give this to someone, they thank you, but you're really telling them you're a busybody. This is from Therese Bartholomew, and to have this painting is plum blossom and swallow. And I put this up at home for special people that come over. And I said, I put this up specially for you. Chinese don't hang their painting. If you know certain friends that come would appreciate it, you put it out and you talk about it and you can comment about it. And sometimes they would write on it, their comments. So certain people come over, we can put this out. And I says, I put this out specially for you. Don't you like it? And they always say, yes, of course. They comment how nice the birds are painted and so on. But what are plums called? Peach blossom. What are peach called? Tou, right? Tao. And what are swallows called? Fei yan, right? So it's Tao Yan, Tou Yin, right? Someone that is very pesky. So you put it up. So they come in and you say, this guy's real pesky. I don't want him around. And I put this up for you and they thank you. Oh, thank you very much, David. You're thinking about me. This is what I gave Richard Young in our genealogy group at Vegas. He comes to all the genealogy workshop. So I gave it to him. I said, this is special for you. I only have a few. He said, thank you. What is it? I said, well, you blow into it. It's a whistle. Whistle. So he blows on it and he plays around with it. Then later on I told him, you know what this means? To have wind blowing on an ox, so you blow an ox. Ox is ngao, and blow is 吹牛. 吹牛. 吹牛 means you're bragging. Okay, so you give to someone that brags. Okay, then I go to the parades. I'm sorry, I'm way behind.
No, take your time, David.
These are old parades. This is Sui Sing in 1888. This is in Rock Spring, where they murdered 28 Chinese in the 1884, something like that. But the important things, those Chinese were forced to go back because the railroad needed coal to run the trains. And they needed the Chinese at Rock Spring to supply them. So the military tricked the Chinese. They think they were going back to San Francisco. The train went back to Rock Spring, and they had to work the mines, but with military guards for 2 years. But they also brought in a dragon. This is the early 1900s. They bought it in 1904 from San Francisco. This is the first New Year celebration in the East Coast, 1871. In New Jersey, Bellevue, New Jersey, where they were brought in to work the steam laundry. There were 3 groups in the East Coast, but New Jersey was the place where it all got started. Most of the Chinese in the East Coast came from Bellevue, New Jersey, North Adam, Massachusetts, and Beaver Fall, Pennsylvania. But that's a whole other talk. Actually, I talk about that for Sharon's Fong's group at the tonight at Rossmore. We're showing the Chinese Exclusion Act, and I'm going to do a question and answer. So part of the celebrations do line dancing and dragon dancing. China, we really didn't have a New Year celebration. This was our New Year parade. We have funeral processions, wedding procession, religious processions. One more I forget, but we have political procession, and that's what was in the U.S. This is Choi Chan, a line going after the greens in the red envelope. In Cantonese, we said Choi Chan. Most of you have heard of that. And the dragon, besides the pearl, which is behind here, where leads the dragon, we also have a fish, we have a rooster, and we have the sun and the moon. Remember I said placement, male stage left is correct, and female stage right. But you have to see these people are facing that way. So they actually have it reversed. Okay? But when you look at it this way, it's not a Chinese word. But if you reverse it, it's Ming, the word for Ming, bright. Also the Ming Dynasty. So if you say Choi Qian in Mandarin, Cai Qing, stepping on the Qing Dynasty, Fu Ming, bring back the Ming. So this was what our ancestors were talking about in the turn of the century. They were very anti-Qing. So when they did this, it's not just a celebration, but bring all the Han Chinese together, say this is what we want to do. So the Chinese New Year parade we have today is not Chinese. Made up in 1953 to bring in the tourists. So a lot of it is not Chinese. And I got involved in 1969, and I brought Kan Chin. I made Kan. Can you raise your hand? Kan Chin. He's been involved with genealogy for a long time too. He and I, in 1969, built our first float for the parade. Kan is a good float builder. He did most of it, but he's a lousy driver. He drove the float through the parade with a clutch. I had about a dozen girls dressed up in dynasty costume on the float, and he kept popping the clutch, and the girls kept falling off. But in 1969, I tell people, they say, geez, you're 19 years old. Where do you get the money to do? Well, that's why I brought him here. We actually did it at that time. But many things we do are not Chinese. Fortune cookie, chop suey you know about in the parade, but you don't know about rice. The rice we have in China is Champa rice. It didn't come into China until Song Dynasty. You can have 3 crops a year in the south. Before that, the wild rice in China, you can only have 1 crop. So the population grew once they imported Champa rice. Blue and white imported the cobalt, the material to make a blue, was from Turkey and Persia. The Mongols imported these into China, and the Chinese made it to ship back to Turkey and Persia, Iran, where they have the largest collection of blue and white. Ming Dynasty blue and white, they have the largest collection, but it's really not Chinese. Li Bai, I think I might have mentioned Li Bai, one of the most loved Chinese poet. He's foreign born, he's a foreigner, he's a Toba, a Li. We claim him to be our ancestor. He was born in Kyrgyzstan. His family moved him to China when he was about 5 years old to Sichuan. So Chinese was a second language for him. So it's crafted. He used simpler words. He used it differently from other poets. But he's a foreigner. These instruments are foreign. We call this erhu. Hu means foreign. Yang, qing, yang is foreign. Chinese word for foreign. Cloisonné brought in by the French Jesuit. The symbol imported from India in the 5th century, jade. Jade was mined out in Neolithic China. We didn't have any. We had to go to Qinghai, the Tarim Basin, to bring it in. Jadeite wasn't introduced into China until Qianlong, about 1750, from Burma. So these are all foreign imports. Martial arts. Shaolin martial art. We learned this from Damo, Bodhidharma from India. He spent, I think, 17 or 19 years in Shaolin, and he taught Shaolin Kung Fu. And we give credit of the founding of tea to also Bodhidharma, who's from India, because there's always that fight. Was tea a Indian plant or China? But the Chinese themselves says it came from Bodhidharma to keep him awake, because he was supposed to meditate. He fell asleep. He thought that was no good. He cut off his eyelid, threw it out of his cave on the ground, and out came this tea plant. So this is supposed to keep you awake. About pasta, is it Italian or is it Chinese? Well, you need durum wheat. You need this harder wheat, and it is Middle Eastern, neither Italy or China, but Middle Eastern. Most of your Italian words describing pasta are Arabic. And then, of course, a water buffalo is also from Southeast Asia that we so identify, and much more, but that's a whole other talk. This is year of the rooster, because the rooster is qi sounds like auspiciousness. Notice the tongue. That's not natural. You never see the rooster or hen with the tongue out. But we make sure, the Cantonese make sure we show the tongue. Why? Because Cantonese, this is lei. Prophet is also lei. So this is, you have to see this to have lei. For those that's going to Vegas, end of this month for the genealogy conference, you go to all the casinos. They never showed it. So I said, I'm not going to go and gamble because I'm not going to have profit. Someone should tell them. And this is year of rodent. It's not rat. Because you can be a beaver, correct. Squirrel, chinchilla, hamster, porcupine, all rodents. You can use all these. In fact, the Chinese most often use this. It's a squirrel. And send out your greetings. You can go online and find all these with tongues because you want to make sure it's a prosperous New Year. And where did we get the word Gong Hei Fa Cui? Why do we say Gong Hei Fa Cui? That's not Sun Ni Fai Lo. Or Gong Ho Sun Hei, which is more formal way of saying it. Where did that come from? 1844, there's this guy, William Hunter, who was there in 1822 to 1844, trading with China. And he says the Chinese traders, the people ahead of the Hongs, when they wanted to wish the Caucasians, the Westerners, Happy New Year, we say Happy New Year, they could be totally confused why we're saying Happy New Year again. So they decide to use 恭喜发财, wish you prosperity. So mainly the Cantonese say 恭喜发财 because it started at that time. And he has it in his book, The Fan Gui at Canton. Go look that up. My source, there's basically 2 books that writes about Chinese American festival. Carol Stepanchuk in Michigan, and Dr. William C. Hu, also of Michigan. Both are at Michigan University. And these are the 2 books I would go to. My wife does a lot of training on hidden meanings, and she actually do more about the New Year than I do, but she doesn't tell you about the negative ones. And the last rebus,
谢谢。
谢谢, because these are 螃蟹. So you can say 谢谢. So 谢谢, thank you, 谢谢. Thank you very much.